My name is Emily, and I am 30 years old. I live in Westbridge, a city full of tall buildings, busy streets, and people constantly chasing their dreams. But behind my quiet smile, my life has been very different, one filled with silent struggles, disappointments, and years of fighting to survive in a family that never truly saw me. I was not born into poverty or hardship. My parents, Linda and Peter, provided me with a home, a good education, and the basic necessities of life. But what they never gave me was emotional support, fairness, or respect. I always felt invisible, like a shadow behind my younger sister, Madison. Madison was their golden child. She was always praised, protected, and spoiled. Even when she did the smallest things, my parents treated her like she had accomplished something extraordinary. Meanwhile, I had to work twice as hard just to be noticed. And still, I was always standing in her shadow. When Madison turned 18, my parents gifted her what they called a fresh start fund, $25,000 to help her build her future. They said it was to give her an advantage in life. But when I turned 18, there was no such conversation. No check. No offer. Nothing. I gathered the courage once to ask my mother if I would also receive some help. She smiled her usual cold smile and said, "Emily, you're strong. You don't need help like Madison does." They called it strength. I called it abandonment. I didn't argue. Arguing with my mother only led to pain and silence. So I swallowed my hurt, buried the disappointment, and focused on building my own life. After graduating, I started working as a freelance graphic designer. While others went out to party or travel, I worked. Every client, every project, every dollar was precious. I didn't have anyone supporting me financially, so I built everything from scratch, one small step at a time. Slowly, over the years, I saved carefully. I didn't buy expensive things like Madison, no designer bags, or fancy vacations. My goal was simple: to create stability for myself, a life that was truly mine. After almost a decade of nonstop work, sacrifices, and countless long nights in front of my computer, I finally reached a place where I felt proud of what I had built. My freelance graphic design business was thriving, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had control over my future. But what made my life even more beautiful was someone I met during this journey, Daniel. Daniel was everything I had never received growing up: calm, kind, patient, and steady. He listened when I spoke. He understood my wounds without judgment. He never made me feel small or guilty for the complicated relationship I had with my family. With him, I found not just love, but peace. We had just recently gotten engaged. My heart should have been full of nothing but joy, but deep down, I felt the quiet storm slowly building. Because I knew my family too well. I knew that in their eyes, nothing came without conditions. And while I had prepared myself for their indifference, I wasn't fully prepared for how far they would go to take away my happiness. After so many years of sacrifice, I decided to give myself a gift, not because anyone expected it, but because I had earned it. I wanted something that would represent all the years of struggle, every late night, every client I had patiently worked with, and every small victory I had achieved alone. So, I ordered something very special, a custom-designed bridal gown. It wasn't just any dress, it was my dream gown. The silk fabric was flawless, the hand-stitched lace was delicate and perfect, and the beadwork shimmered under the light like tiny stars. It was made by a well-known designer in Los Angeles, and it symbolized everything I had built on my own. The gown cost me $15,000, an amount that once seemed impossible, but which I had earned through pure dedication. To me, it was not just a dress, it was a symbol of my independence and survival. I still remember the moment I opened the box for the first time. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the cover, revealing the gown carefully folded inside. My breath caught in my throat. It was more beautiful than I had even imagined. The first person I showed it to was Daniel. His eyes lit up with joy when he saw it. "You earned every bit of this, Emily," he whispered, pulling me into his arms. "I am so proud of you." His words healed parts of me my family had broken for years. As the wedding planning continued, I carefully stored the dress away, waiting for the day I would wear it. The day that was supposed to be about love, commitment, and finally stepping into a life I had built by myself. But in my heart, I couldn't fully relax, because I knew my parents, and I knew Madison. Whenever something good happened for me, they always found a way to spoil it. I just didn't know yet how far they were willing to go this time. The evening of our engagement party finally arrived. The garden venue was breathtaking, an open hall draped in soft ivory fabric, glowing under warm golden lights. Delicate candles lined the paths, and soft music floated gently through the air. It should have been one of the happiest nights of my life. Daniel stood beside me the entire evening, his hand gently resting at the small of my back, offering silent support. Every time my stomach tightened from anxiety, one glance at his calm smile would pull me back. Because even though everything looked perfect, my family's presence was like a storm cloud hanging quietly in the distance. At one table sat my parents, Linda and Peter. Their smiles were stiff and polite, the kind that looked pleasant from afar but empty up close. And sitting beside them, of course, was Madison. She scrolled through her phone, barely pretending to engage with anyone, while still somehow managing to remain the center of my parents' attention. That was the story of my life. As I greeted guests and received warm congratulations, I couldn't shake the growing unease building inside me. I had caught my mother's eyes scanning my gown earlier in the evening. She had commented softly, pretending to sound casual. "Emily, this dress, it's quite extravagant, isn't it?" I smiled politely, but said nothing. Her tone was familiar, a soft warning wrapped in fake kindness. My best friend, Chloe, who had always stood by my side, leaned in quietly and whispered, "Don't let them steal your moment. You deserve every second of this, Emily." I nodded, grateful for her steady support. But the heavy feeling in my chest wouldn't go away. My parents hadn't offered to help with the wedding planning, hadn't shown any excitement about the engagement, but I had grown used to their distance. Now, standing in that beautiful venue, I felt certain they hadn't come just to celebrate. They had come with an agenda. I looked around at my friends, my coworkers, my cousins, all happy for me. But I could feel it. Something was coming. The music slowed. The clinking of glasses softened. Then my mother stood up slowly, tapping her wine glass with a spoon. The soft ringing sound silenced the room as every eye turned toward her. Daniel's hand instinctively tightened around mine beneath the table. We both knew this was it. My mother, Linda, stood confidently, smiling with a kind of grace she always displayed in public, cold, polished, and calculated. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the room like a sharp knife. "First, I want to say how proud Peter and I are of Emily and Daniel. What a beautiful couple. What a beautiful evening." Polite applause followed, but I noticed some guests shifting awkwardly in their seats. The tension was already thick, and many could feel something wasn't right. I forced a small smile, trying to stay composed, but inside, my body braced for the blow I knew was coming. And then, her tone shifted. "However," she continued, lowering her glass onto the table, "Peter and I have been talking, and as parents, it's our responsibility to ensure that both of our daughters have equal opportunities for happiness." My heart began pounding. "As you all know," she went on, "Madison is also planning her future. Unfortunately, she's not as financially prepared as Emily is." She paused dramatically. "That is why we've asked Emily to do something simple but meaningful, to give her bridal gown to Madison, who needs it more at this time." The entire room froze. I blinked in disbelief. The $15,000 gown, the one I had worked for years to afford, the one I had dreamed of wearing on my special day, and now she was demanding I give it away to Madison. Daniel's hand gently squeezed mine, steadying me as I slowly stood up. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked, my voice calm, but firm. "The dress, Emily," Linda repeated, now speaking louder. "It's absolutely beautiful, yes. But you don't need such extravagance. Madison hasn't even picked a gown yet for her future wedding. This would mean so much to her. You've always been fortunate. You can share." I stared at her, my breath caught in my chest. I paid for this gown, Mother. Every single dollar. $15,000 that I earned through years of hard work. No one gave it to me. Not you. Not Dad. No one. Her pleasant smile faltered for the first time, and Peter, as always, kept his head down, saying nothing. You've always been selfish, she hissed quietly. Always making everything about yourself. You could do one small thing for your sister. Madison now stood beside her, feigning sadness.
Wow, Emily.
I didn't think you'd be this bitter. You have everything now. Why is it so hard for you to share a little? Something inside me snapped. This isn't about sharing. I snapped back. This is about you both feeling entitled to what I've worked for. Madison spent the $25,000 you gave her like it was nothing. I built my life from nothing, and now you want to take that too?
No.
Not this time. The room was completely silent. Dozens of eyes stared, shocked at the raw family tension now laid bare for everyone to see. My mother's face hardened. The mask of politeness shattered. What I saw now was the real Linda, bitter, controlling, and furious at losing power. You ungrateful girl, she whispered through clenched teeth. And then she stepped toward me, her rage no longer contained. Before I could react, my mother lunged forward. Her hand flew across my face with a sharp, loud slap that echoed through the silent room. My head snapped to the side, my cheek instantly burning. Gasps erupted all around us as some guests froze. Others covered their mouths in shock. But she wasn't finished. Without hesitation, she grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanking it fiercely. My scalp burned with pain as she pulled me closer to her face, her eyes wide and wild with fury. You think you're better than your own family? She hissed in a low, shaking voice. You think our independence makes you superior to your mother? I'll teach you respect. I struggled to pull away, but her grip tightened. Daniel shouted my name, rushing forward, but before he could reach me, my mother's hands suddenly moved to my throat. Her fingers wrapped around my neck, squeezing with shocking strength. My breath caught instantly. For a moment, my vision blurred as panic filled my chest. Around us, the guests were no longer frozen. Chloe shouted for help, others jumped from their seats. Daniel was screaming for her to stop as he tried to force himself between us. Let go of her, Daniel yelled, his voice trembling with panic. With one violent shove, Linda pushed me backward, releasing my neck as she did. My feet stumbled, unable to catch balance. I slammed into the wall behind me, and my head struck the corner hard. A sharp burst of pain exploded at the back of my skull, and my knees nearly buckled. I instinctively pressed my hand to the throbbing ache as dizziness washed over me. Oh my God, Chloe screamed as she rushed toward me. Emily, are you okay? The room descended into chaos. Some guests were crying, others yelling. Daniel stood protectively in front of me now, shielding me from any further attack. Chloe was already dialing 911, her hands shaking but her voice strong. This is an assault. We need police and medical help immediately. Right now. My cousin, Olivia, stood beside her, her face pale but voice firm. Everyone saw it. She attacked Emily right in front of all of us. My mother stood motionless for a moment, as if realizing the horror of what had just unfolded publicly. But instead of showing remorse, her lips curled into a bitter, angry sneer. My father still stood several feet behind her, completely useless, eyes darting nervously around the room. Despite the dizziness, I forced myself to stand tall. This time, I wasn't going to shrink away. This time, the world had seen her for who she truly was. The faint sound of sirens echoed from a distance. The storm had finally broken. And this time, my mother wouldn't escape it. The flashing red and blue lights lit up the night as two police cruisers pulled up outside the garden venue. The guests fell completely silent, all eyes turning toward the entrance as the officers entered the hall. Leading them was Officer Grant, whose calm, steady presence immediately commanded the room. His partner, Officer Miller, moved quickly behind him, clearing a path through the stunned crowd. Chloe stepped forward to meet them, her voice trembling but strong. "Officer, I'm the one who called. Emily's mother assaulted her. She slapped her, pulled her hair, choked her, and shoved her into that wall. Everyone here saw it." Officer Grant nodded, quickly scanning the scene, his eyes pausing on me, standing beside Daniel, my hand still pressed to the back of my head. "Ma'am, are you the victim?" he asked gently. My throat was dry, but I stood up straighter and answered firmly.
Yes.
"My name is Emily. My mother attacked me." Daniel kept his arm around my waist, steadying me as my head continued to throb. But despite the pain, I was clear. This moment, this long overdue moment, was finally here. Officer Grant turned to my mother, who now stood by the buffet table, arms tightly crossed, her face flushed with both anger and panic. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you," Officer Grant said calmly but firmly. My mother snapped defensively, her voice rising. "This is just a family argument. She's exaggerating everything. It wasn't that serious." Before the officers could respond, Olivia stepped forward boldly. "That's not true, officer. I was right here." She slapped Emily hard, grabbed her by the throat, and shoved her into that wall. "Look at her injuries." Chloe added quickly, "I have video evidence. I started recording right after the attack. I've already saved it and backed it up." Officer Grant exchanged a brief glance with Officer Miller and nodded. "Thank you, ladies. That will be very helpful." Turning back to my mother, Officer Grant's voice remained calm, but there was no room for negotiation. "Ma'am, assault is a criminal offense, especially when witnessed by multiple people and captured on video. Family disagreements do not justify violence. You are under arrest for assault and battery." "This is insane," Linda shouted, her voice filled with rage. "She's my daughter." Officer Miller gently but firmly took her by the arm while Officer Grant read her rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The room remained silent, guests staring in shock as my mother was led outside toward the waiting police car. Her forced composure had completely vanished, replaced with fury and fear. My father trailed behind, saying nothing, eyes lowered in shame, as useless and silent as he had always been. Daniel gently squeezed my hand and whispered, "You stood your ground tonight. I'm so proud of you." I swallowed hard, holding back tears. She doesn't control me anymore. As the police car doors closed behind my mother, I felt something lift. A heavy weight I had carried for years was finally being taken away. The world had seen the truth. And this time there would be consequences. The courtroom was colder than I expected. The polished wooden benches, the echo of footsteps, and the serious faces of strangers all made the weight of the moment feel heavier. But Daniel was there, holding my hand tightly as we walked in. Behind us were Chloe and Olivia, both ready to testify if needed. Across the aisle sat my parents. My mother, Linda, was dressed in a plain beige coat, trying to appear composed, but her stiff posture couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. My father, Peter, sat quietly beside her, as distant and useless as ever, not once looking in my direction. The judge, Honorable Judge Reynolds, entered and called the session to order. She was a sharp, serious woman with no patience for nonsense. I instantly knew this court would not be swayed by emotional games. The prosecution began presenting the evidence. Multiple eyewitness statements. Chloe's video, capturing the aftermath of the attack. Photographs of my bruises, and the red marks on my neck. My medical report confirming the head injury from hitting the wall. The 911 call log and police report. My attorney, Rachel Bennett, stood confidently, her voice steady and calm as she addressed the court. "Your Honor, this was not an ordinary family dispute. This was a violent public assault, a mother physically attacking her adult daughter in front of dozens of witnesses. Emily suffered physical and emotional harm that cannot be dismissed or excused." The defense attorney, trying to downplay my mother's actions, argued that Linda simply lost her temper in a moment of family frustration and never intended real harm. But Judge Reynolds cut through those weak arguments with clear, firm words. Family frustration is not an excuse for physical violence. This court does not tolerate assault, regardless of family relations. Multiple witnesses, video evidence, visible injuries, and medical reports all support the victim's statement. Throughout the hearing, my mother said nothing. She didn't testify. She simply stared ahead, pretending to be the victim of an overblown situation. But the evidence spoke louder than any words she could have given. Finally, after hearing all arguments, the judge prepared to give her decision. "Linda Collins," the judge began, her voice sharp and final, "this court finds you guilty of assault and battery under state law. The public nature of this assault, your complete lack of remorse, and the clear evidence presented leave no room for doubt." I held my breath as the sentence was delivered. A fine of $3,000 to be paid immediately. 10 days in county jail, starting within 1 week. 12 months of supervised probation. Mandatory anger management counseling sessions. My mother's mouth opened slightly, stunned at the punishment. For the first time, real fear showed in her eyes. My father, as always, remained silent. Then, Judge Reynolds looked directly at me. "Miss Emily Collins, is there anything you wish to say before we close this hearing?" I stood up slowly, my voice calm but strong. "Yes, Your Honor. I never imagined I'd have to take legal action against my own mother. But no one has the right to hurt others, not even a parent. I hope this sends a message. No one is above the law." The judge nodded with respect. "Very well. This court is adjourned." As my mother was escorted away by officers, she never looked back at me. My father simply followed behind, still offering her no comfort, just like he never offered it to me. Rachel placed her hand on my shoulder gently. "You were brave, Emily. And you made sure she finally faced the consequences." Chloe hugged me tightly, while Olivia whispered in my ear, "It's finally over." I nodded quietly, but deep inside, I knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning of my true freedom. In the weeks following the trial, my life finally became quieter, something I had long dreamed of. But for my sister Madison, the fallout was just beginning. At first, she tried to act like nothing had changed. Her social media was filled with fake smiles, staged photos, and cheerful captions. She posted about exciting plans and personal growth, trying to maintain the illusion that everything was perfectly fine. But reality has a way of breaking through even the most carefully curated lies. Word of my mother's public assault and the entire courtroom drama spread quickly through our extended family, friends, and even local social circles. People who once admired Madison for her charm and beauty began to quietly distance themselves. The most devastating blow came from someone she never expected, her fiancé. He had stayed silent through the initial chaos, but after learning the full story, he broke off the engagement quietly and disappeared from her life. There was no public statement, no dramatic announcement, just silence. And that silence spoke louder than anything else. The invitations Madison used to receive to weddings, parties, and dinners slowly stopped coming. Cousins who once adored her now avoided her entirely. Family friends, who once praised my parents for raising such wonderful daughters, stopped calling. Even her closest friends started to drift away, unwilling to associate with the scandal that followed her name. One day, Chloe told me what she had overheard at a family gathering. "They're saying Madison brought this on herself," Chloe whispered. "Everyone saw her entitlement. They're embarrassed to be connected to her now." Madison tried desperately to rebuild her image. New photo shoots, inspirational quotes, and forced smiles, but the cracks were impossible to hide. Her reputation was permanently stained. And for once in my life, I no longer lived under her shadow. She had finally fallen from the pedestal my parents had built for her. I never celebrated her downfall. I didn't need revenge. My only goal was always to reclaim my own peace, to build the life I was never given but always deserved. Now, while Madison faded into her lonely world of pretend perfection, my world was finally full of real happiness. The day of my wedding finally arrived. The sky was clear, the soft breeze gently rustling through the trees, and the garden venue was even more beautiful than I had imagined. Everything was simple, peaceful, and filled with genuine love, exactly what I had dreamed of all my life. Gone were the fake smiles, the toxic whispers, and the family drama. The people who stood with me that day were my real family: Daniel, Chloe, Olivia, my closest friends, and a few kind relatives who had quietly supported me through everything. I stood in front of the mirror, wearing my custom-designed bridal gown, the same one I had fought to keep. The silk glowed softly under the morning light, the lace delicate and flawless, every bead shining like tiny stars. It wasn't just a dress. It was a symbol of my survival, my hard work, and my independence. Every stitch held a piece of my story. As I finished getting ready, there was a soft knock on the door. The security guard spoke quietly from outside. "Miss Collins." Madison tried to enter through the side gate. She was carrying a bottle of red wine. "We've escorted her off the property." No further action was needed. I took a deep breath, my hands resting lightly on the skirt of my gown. Good. Let's not waste another second on her. There was no more fear, no more guilt, only peace. A few minutes later, I stepped into the garden and walked down the aisle, locking eyes with Daniel, who stood waiting for me with his warm, steady smile. His love never wavered, not during the family drama, not during the trial, not even once. We exchanged our vows under the soft glow of afternoon light, surrounded by those who truly cared for us. Each word felt powerful, meaningful, a promise not just of love, but of healing. As Daniel gently placed the ring on my finger, I finally felt it. Freedom. The chains of my past had been broken. This was my new beginning. In the months following our wedding, life settled into a kind of peace I had never known before. The silence that once felt empty now felt calming. No more toxic phone calls. No more manipulative visits. No more exhausting attempts to please people who never truly cared. It was just Daniel and me, building our life together, day by day. And soon, life surprised us with something even more beautiful. I found out I was pregnant. The moment I saw the positive test, I burst into tears, not from fear or anxiety, but from pure happiness. Daniel wrapped me in his arms, smiling through his own tears. "We're going to be parents, Emily," he whispered softly. "Our child will never go through what you did. I promise." Throughout my pregnancy, we prepared quietly, decorating the nursery, reading baby books, and dreaming about the future. Chloe and Olivia were constantly around, helping me shop for baby clothes and giving me all the advice they could. 9 months later, on a calm spring morning, we welcomed our beautiful baby boy into the world, Lucas. As I held him for the first time, his tiny fingers wrapping gently around mine, I whispered softly through tears, "You'll never have to fight to feel loved, my son. You are more than enough, just as you are." Looking into Lucas's peaceful little face, I knew that the cycle of pain had finally been broken. I had built a life filled with love, safety, and truth, something my parents were never able to give me. My story was never about revenge. It was about finding peace, about breaking free, about healing wounds that once felt impossible to heal. And as I rocked my son gently to sleep, Daniel sitting beside me, his hand resting on my shoulder, I finally said the words I had waited my whole life to say. I'm free. Please like the video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more real-life stories. Thank you for watching.